My daughter-in-law, Sophie, told me I was just a guest in my own home. She said it on a Sunday morning, her voice smooth as polished marble and just as cold. The smell of cinnamon rolls was still in the air, and sunlight was spilling across the kitchen tiles, catching the gold strands in her hair like threads of fire. She stood in front of the sink, arms folded tight across her chest, chin tilted high like she was standing guard over something that wasn't hers but wanted to be. "This isn't your house anymore, Rosalind," she said. "It's ours now. You're just a guest." I remember my hands trembling as I set down the mug of tea I'd been holding. The porcelain clinked against the saucer, a sound far too fragile for the moment. My knees locked to keep me steady. Just a guest. The words sank into me slowly, like stones falling through water, until they hit something deep and hard and old inside me. The house wasn't just wood and brick. It was the echo of my late husband's laughter in the hallway, the grooves of my children's heights carved into the doorframe, the faint smell of lavender polish on the banister I had scrubbed for decades. Every inch of it had my fingerprints buried somewhere beneath the paint. And yet here stood Sophie, in my kitchen, declaring it hers. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Behind her, the kitchen window framed the garden where I had planted daffodils the spring after Henry died, hoping something beautiful might dare bloom from the wreckage. Those flowers were still there, still blooming every year, stubborn and loyal as old friends. I wished, in that moment, that I could be like them. But I only whispered, "I built this home." Sophie's eyes flicked toward me, unreadable. "And we're building a life in it now," she said, and walked out, leaving the smell of her perfume in the air like a curtain drawn between us. It wasn't always like this. When my son Ethan first brought Sophie home, she was soft-spoken, almost shy. She sat on the very edge of the sofa, smoothing her skirt, and smiled when I offered her my famous lemon tarts. Ethan's eyes followed her like she was made of light. "She makes me feel safe," he said later, his voice hushed as if saying it too loudly might break the spell. I wanted to love her for that. And for a while, I did. When they married, Henry was already gone, and this house felt too big, too hollow. So when they asked to move in, just for a while, to save for their own place, I said yes. I even painted the spare bedroom yellow for them, warm as butter. I told myself it would be good, life, laughter, maybe even children's footsteps to soften the silence. And for a while, it was. Sophie would bring home flowers, and Ethan would carry in boxes of books. They filled the house with the sound of their music, their late-night giggles, their whispered plans. I stayed in the background, making tea, keeping my voice quiet. It was enough just to hear him laugh again. But somewhere along the way, the air shifted. Sophie began moving my things without asking. The antique clock from the mantel disappeared into a box in the attic. The floral curtains I sewed myself were replaced with sleek gray blinds. My armchair, the one Henry used to sit in, tapping his fingers to the radio, was rehomed without a word. I kept telling myself it was fine. It was just furniture. Just things. But when I found the framed photograph of Henry and me on our wedding day turned face down on the bookshelf, something inside me cracked like old porcelain. I put it back up, silently. 2 days later, it was gone. The morning Sophie told me I was just a guest, Ethan was still upstairs, asleep. I don't know if he heard any of it. Maybe that's worse, maybe he didn't want to hear. As Sophie's footsteps faded down the hall, I sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at the steam curling from my forgotten tea. I thought of all the years I spent in this house, painting the nursery walls when Ethan was born, hanging paper snowflakes from the ceiling one magical Christmas, standing in the doorway watching Henry walk out for the last time to catch a train he never returned from. I had weathered every storm here. And now, somehow, I was the storm to be cleared away. A guest. I don't know how long I sat there. Time folded in on itself like an old blanket. But eventually, I stood and walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last, until I reached the door to the master bedroom, my bedroom, once. Sophie and Ethan's now. It was closed. Locked, even. That was when I knew something had shifted too far to ever shift back. And something inside me whispered, "This is not your home anymore." I just didn't know then what Sophie had already done behind closed doors. And how it would break Ethan, and me, both. I learned the truth 2 weeks later, on an evening that smelled of rain and regret. Ethan had gone out for groceries, and Sophie was in the kitchen on the phone, her voice sharp and fast, like scissors snipping fabric. I paused in the hallway, meaning to ask her if she wanted tea, but the words she spoke rooted me to the floor. "Yes, the papers are signed," she said. "She'll be out by the end of the month." "No, she has no idea. Ethan thinks it's just a refinance." My heart slammed against my ribs. Papers. Out by the end of the month. She was talking about me. About this house. My hand trembled against the wall as if even the plaster could hold me up. My mind tried to reject the words, twist them into something harmless. Maybe she was talking about someone else. Maybe she didn't mean out. But then she said, softer, "She's had her time here. This is our life now. Not hers." I slipped back into the sitting room before she saw me, my knees hollow, my breath coming shallow. The old floorboards creaked beneath me, and I swore they were crying, too. For hours after that, I sat in Henry's old chair, the one Sophie hadn't managed to get rid of yet, and stared at the window as the rain came down. Lightning flashed once, painting the garden silver. The daffodils were bent low from the storm, but they were still standing. I thought of packing my things. I thought of leaving quietly, like a shadow. But then I thought of Ethan, my boy who used to climb into my lap just to hear me hum, who once brought me a dandelion crown from the yard and called me his queen. Did he know? Was he part of this? The thought hollowed me. When he came home that night, soaked and smiling, carrying 2 bags of groceries, I almost asked. The words pressed against my teeth like birds against glass. But Sophie swept in from the kitchen, wrapped her arms around him, and said, "Everything's going to be perfect soon." Perfect. I swallowed my questions like bitter seeds. Days passed in a fog. Sophie moved through the house like a queen surveying her kingdom, while I tiptoed through my own life like a thief. I started noticing boxes tucked into corners, my old books, my sewing kit, my wedding china, all labeled in her tidy handwriting, storage. Ethan seemed tired. There were bruised crescents under his eyes, and he jumped when the phone rang. Sometimes he would find me in the garden and sit silently beside me, like he used to when he was small, as if words were too heavy for both of us. Once, he reached for my hand, and then stopped halfway, as though remembering he wasn't supposed to anymore. Something was unraveling. I could feel it in the quiet, like a thread being pulled through the seams of our lives. And then, one night, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I found Ethan alone in the kitchen, staring at a pile of unopened mail. The clock ticked loud as a heartbeat. "Ethan," I said softly, "are you happy?" He blinked, startled. "Of course I am. You don't look it." He gave a short, broken laugh. "I'm just tired." I stepped closer. "Sophie is making changes to the house." He tensed, his shoulders tightening like a drawstring bag. "It's her home too now." "Is it?" I whispered. "Is it still mine?" His head snapped up. "Mum." "I heard her," I said. "Talking about papers. About me leaving." His mouth opened, then closed. A muscle jumped in his jaw. And in that silence, I saw it, the crack. The fear. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling, "what has she done?" He pressed his hands to his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was a shredded thing. She had me sign something. Said it was a mortgage refinance. But it wasn't. His breath caught. She put the house in her name. The room tilted. Everything I had built, everything I had held on to, was gone. Not stolen with noise or force, but with ink. With a signature from the boy I had raised, the boy who had trusted love more than he trusted his own mother. Ethan's hands were shaking. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Mum, I swear, I didn't know." And I believed him. Which made it worse. Because then he whispered, "If I leave her, I lose everything." And I realized with a cold, creeping dread that Sophie hadn't just taken my home. She had taken my son. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Sophie had gone to a spa weekend, leaving a note on the counter in her slanted, perfect handwriting, "Back Sunday. Don't wait up." The letters looked like they were smiling. I stood there staring at them until my vision blurred, until the paper felt like it was pulsing in my hand. Ethan was upstairs, still in bed, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt like mine again, not because it was safe, but because it was raw and wounded, and I knew how to sit with wounds. I made tea and carried 2 cups upstairs. I found Ethan sitting on the edge of their bed, head bowed, shoulders hunched like a man twice his age. He didn't look up when I came in. "Do you hate me?" he asked quietly. The question tore through me. "Oh, my darling boy," I whispered. "No. Never. I ruined everything." I sat beside him. The mattress sagged under our shared weight, just like it used to when he'd crawl into bed with me after nightmares, clutching his teddy bear so tight it left fur on his cheeks. "You were trying to build a life," I said. "You trusted someone. That isn't ruin. That's love." "She used me," he said flatly. "And I let her." I set the tea on the nightstand and took his hands. They were cold. "We will find a way," I said. Together. The days that followed felt like walking on shattered glass. Sophie returned Sunday evening, radiant and glowing, and swept through the house like a summer storm, humming, rearranging the furniture, making calls. Ethan followed her silently, his face an unreadable mask. But I saw the cracks widening. She began locking the study, where Henry's old files and deed papers had once been kept. She whispered on the phone in the garden, pacing the path like a caged animal. At night, I heard them arguing through the thin walls, her voice rising sharp as knives, his falling soft and broken, like paper tearing. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, everything snapped. I was dusting the shelves in the sitting room when I heard a crash from upstairs, then shouting, frantic and wild. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding so hard it made the hallway blur. Sophie stood in the doorway of the bedroom, her face flushed, her hands clenched around a crumpled piece of paper. Ethan stood across from her, pale and shaking. "You snooped," she screamed. "You went through my drawer." "I had to know," he shot back, his voice shaking. "You were going to sell it." The word hit me like a slap. Sell. The house. My home. Sophie's eyes were blazing. Of course I was. "Do you think I want to rot in this museum forever? We could get a fortune for it, Ethan. A fresh start. No ghosts. No roots, either," he said. His voice cracked. "This is my childhood. My family. My mother. She's not your future," Sophie spat. "I wouldn't even have a future if not for her." The silence that followed was like thunder with the sound stripped out. Sophie's lip curled. "So choose, then. Her or me." It wasn't even a question. It was a blade. Ethan's eyes closed. When they opened, there was something new in them, something steady, like the boy he used to be when he climbed the tallest tree in the garden just to prove he could. "I choose the person who's never lied to me," he said quietly. Sophie's face went still. Cold. Then she hurled the paper at him, it fluttered like a wounded bird to the floor, and she pushed past me, storming down the stairs. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled. The house shuddered into silence. Ethan sank to the floor. His hands were shaking. I knelt beside him and picked up the crumpled paper. It was a contract, slick with legal language, and in bold black letters at the bottom, "Offer accepted, sale pending." The house. She had been days from selling it right out from under us. Ethan buried his face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I reached for him, and for the first time in years, he let me hold him like my little boy again. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, letters, and long nights at the kitchen table, our fingers smudged with ink and exhaustion. It wasn't easy. Sophie had been clever, too clever, but not careful. Some of the signatures were forged. Some of the filings incomplete. Ethan fought for the house like he was fighting for breath, and I stood behind him like I always had, quiet but unyielding. In the end, Sophie got the car, the savings account, and her freedom. We got the house. The day she left, the air smelled like rain again. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even look back. She just slammed the boot of her car, slid into the driver's seat, and vanished down the drive without so much as a puff of dust in her wake. Ethan stood on the porch for a long time after she was gone. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "It's quiet." "Yes," I said. "It is." He turned to me, and for a flicker of a moment, he smiled, not wide, not sure, but real. "It has been 6 months now. The house is still standing. So are we. The rooms are lighter somehow, the walls breathing easier. We've repainted the kitchen. We dug a new bed for the daffodils. We even laughed once, really laughed, so hard that I had to wipe tears from my eyes while Ethan gasped for air like a boy again. Sometimes, when the sun spills across the tiles in the morning, I think of Sophie standing there, saying I was just a guest. And I smile. Because she was wrong. I am not a guest here. I am the roots in the floorboards. The echo in the hallway. The soul stitched into every corner of this house. And if being that means being called a ghost, then so be it. Because ghosts don't leave. And I am not going anywhere. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own home, or fought to protect the place that held your family's memories? Your stories matter, and your voice could comfort someone who feels alone right now. If you felt the weight of love, loss, and resilience in these words, please like this video and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Together, let's build a community where our memories are never forgotten, and our voices are always heard.